Every weight class in powerlifting has its appeal, but which ones are absolutely must watch that deliver every single time? That's what we're looking at today based on the top 10 active current lifters in each men's weight class in raw tested powerlifting. So it wouldn't be a press powerlifting video without some quick criteria. I'll go through this quickly. I'm only going to have two of these, but when I say exciting, what I mean, tight battles, right? If you have one lifter who's far and away ahead of everyone, sure, that's cool for dominance and everything, but when it comes to excitement, drama, tight battles is what you want. Showdowns where you just don't know who's going to win until the last round of deadlifts. That's what makes weight classes the most exciting to me. And of course, the wow factor, right? Drama, even if you have a lifter who's pretty far ahead, if they happen to be the strongest person ever or just setting new limits for the weight class, that still makes it exciting, even if it's not necessarily through close head-to-head battles all the time. But there you go. Straight into the list. Number 8, the super heavyweights, the 120 plus kilo category. So like I said, for each of these, I'm going to be showing you the top 10 active lifters in the weight class based on their best ever totals. I'm not counting retired lifters who no longer compete actively. This is a top 10. I'm going to show you the best total, and the trophy represents the fact that they're the current world champion, and the globe represents the current IPF world record holder. So at the top, you have Jesus Olivares, obviously, 5-time world champion now, equal with Ray's number, as well as world record holder, current world champion Ray Williams below him, former super heavyweight king. Now with Ray, 1112.5 is his best ever total. However, since sort of he's dropped off slightly from his prime, kind of 2019, he's been around the 1,000 mark, starting to get back up into the mid-thousands, but he popped for a banned stimulant, so he's banned for at least until next year, so he's going to miss PA Nats, which kind of sucks. Devontae Lewis, nice breath of fresh air for this weight class, 1108 that he totaled in a untested Fed. However, he's a tested lifter, hopefully coming across to Powerlifting America, but not yet, so we'll see what happens there. Timur Semkaradze, 1087.5, multiple-time world's podium winner and like 4-time junior world champion, something ridiculous. Biggest deadlift ever until Nonso pulled above him. But 1087.5, he's since lost like 20-30 kilos of body weight, and now his total is about 100 kilos below that in the high 900s. Chen Kochak, who's been in the 1,000, around the low thousands as his best total for years now, also multiple-time world's medalist. AJ Sharma has cracked into the thousands from the UK, also podiumed at Worlds this year. Victor Goline, who took a somewhat surprise victory at Euros this year, formerly a Quip lifter, lifting raw and won Euros. I don't know if he plans to compete raw again or not, but it'd be cool if he does. He's in the high nines. They have some other athletes in the high nines. Maxim Prokhorov from Russia. Obviously, Russian athletes haven't really been able to compete internationally much. Hopefully that changes soon, and we see another high nines lifter join the international IPF circuit. Ali Al-Qassem from Kuwait, 980, who's only done that one meet according to Open Powerlifting, so not much more I can say about that. And oh my god, it's Jason Byrne in number 10. Canadian lifter, 975, also knocking on door off that 1,000. So here's your top 10 current active super heavyweights. Now, the thing with the super heavyweight class is, first of all, I like all weight classes, by the way. I follow all of them, I'm a big fan of all of them. This is if I had to rank them in order, which I'm doing now, I just have to put the 120 pluses at the bottom because it's the most predictable weight class. You have Jesus, who's 100 plus kilos ahead of everyone else. Not his fault, obviously, for being that good, but it just doesn't make it as exciting as some of the other weight classes where it's all up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen. Also, the fact that Jesus hit his 1152.5 at the inaugural Sheffield over 2 years ago, 2023. Since then, he's been floating around low 1100s, even dropped below that at this most recent Worlds. I understand it was injured, not the best circumstances, but still. So the fact that pretty much for the last 2 years in super heavyweights, it's been a story about Jesus is 100 plus kilos out of everyone, but he can't quite beat his own record because he can't solve his deadlift lockout issues, right? He still has big squats and big benches. Obviously takes it slightly easier at Worlds, but even at the 2 Sheffields we've seen since, he just can't get that final pull to beat Timur's 411 record, even though he has the strength to do way more. So because of that, yes, there's the wow factor of Jesus being the strongest human being ever when it comes to powerlifters on the raw tested side by far. Yeah, he's just not as exciting to watch as some of those other weight classes, in my opinion. And like I said, Ray is banned for a while now. Plus, we're not seeing the showdown between Jesus and Ray because Jesus doesn't have to do PA Nats. So Ray can still win national titles without really contesting at the international level because he's not taking Jesus' spot at Worlds. The reason I almost put this actually at number 7, and that is purely because of Devontae Lewis. Devontae Lewis is someone who could come in and elevate this weight class up this rankings because Jesus needs some competition, in my opinion, right? Jesus is someone who's been dominating for so long, relatively unopposed. Like I said, he's 100 plus kills out of his newest competition. So Devontae coming in, hopefully to Powerlifting America in the 1100s to challenge him, probably, or I think he has the potential to outsquat and outbench him. And, if Jesus doesn't have a good deadlift day, he would probably need it to beat Devontae head to head. And then, everyone else is sort of on the international scene is around the low thousands, high 900s, which is cool, but not really threatening Jesus' position. Okay, number 7 is the 66 kilo weight class. Now, this is an interesting one because the 66s usually, or historically, would be higher up on this list. If I had made this list a year ago, or even just earlier this year, I definitely would have had the 66s higher. The thing is, a lot of people have left this weight class, largely due to Shell Backlund's presence, and funny enough, Shell also left himself. So, the rankings, you can see there. So, Avery Jackson, national champion, pulled off the upset, silver medal at Worlds. Joe Jordan, World Games champion, totaling 720. He also missed a 15 kilo jump on his final deadlift narrowly, so it would have put him at 735, which is definitely quite a bit higher than everyone else. Also, gym totals of 740, 750, so you could argue the strongest 66 right now. Jonathan Garcia has been up there with low 700s for a while, world's medalist. Daniel Clemens, unfortunately, got injured. He totaled in the 740s as a 67.5 lifter in the USAPL a few years back. He's come across Powerlifting America, totaled 717.5, but he's been dealing with injuries, so I don't know when he's coming back again. Austin Nikolai, the junior world champion in the 700s. Clifton Foe, 700.5, set the deadlift world record at World Games, which is pretty cool, beating Shell's record. Morgan Garcia, another former USAPL lifter who has been injured, and his best total came 2 years ago. Since then, he's been in the high 6s. Luke McCain is an 18-year-old USAPL lifter, knocking on the door of 700, which is crazy. Hopefully, he comes across to Powerlifting America. Santos Jimenez podiumed at Worlds this year from Mexico, and Yusuke Satake from Japan has also been up there in the high 6s for quite a few years. The thing with the 66s is you have mainstays in the division. So you have Panna, 2-time world champion and the most popular lifter in the division by far, moving up to the 74s. Kyoto Ishiyama, also super popular lifter, mainstay at the world's podium for the last couple of years, also moving on to the 74s. And you had Shell Backlund come in, absolutely destroy the world record and add like 50 kilos to it, push it up to 770, and then dip, win worlds, and then see you later, I'm done with 66s. Fair enough, right? But what that meant for the weight class is all of a sudden, totals in the low 700s aren't as impressive anymore when we've seen Shell come in and annihilate it with 770. And that is a compliment to Shell, by the way, because of how insane that performance was at Sheffield that he did. But before, the 66s would have been one of the most dramatic weight classes filled with crazy battles of people in the low 700s going against one another, right? Kyoto, Kasim Sand is another one who's dropped. He's actually gone the other way, dropped to the 59s. Jonathan Garcia, Panna, right? Like all those guys were there. And Brian Lee also is not on this list because he's not actively lifting, but he definitely would be there too. But it's different seeing a bunch of people in the low 700s go head to head when the world record was 710, which it was for ages, versus having a bunch of people in the low 700s go head to head now when the world record's 770. It's just not as impressive. It's still cool and it's a cool battle, right? Which is why I ranked this above the super heavyweights, because it's still going to be a cool head to head. And thinking, okay, who takes the place in this sort of new generation of 66s now that the division's shaken up so much? But it sort of hits different when you know that someone out there knocked the world record so unattainably out of reach that, you know, it's just not on the cards for anyone at the moment, I think, anyway. But yeah, that's my story with the 66s. Number 6 is the 105s. So here, Anthony McNaughton is on top by quite a bit. World champion, world record holder, 979 at PA Nats, 975.5 is the IPF world record at Worlds this year. Then Ashton Ruska in at number 2, 960.5. He's totaled 968, weighing 105 point something as a 110 lifter in the USAPL. But he's sort of been around that mark since like 2 years ago when he his best totals. He came across and won a world title, only totaling what he needed to. Unfortunately, was injured for Sheffield. And now it's tough because he's got Keenan Lee and Anthony McNaughton to contend against if he wants to make it back to the world stage. Speaking of which, Keenan Lee, 958.5, also, part of that sort of trio, Ashton, Bob, Keenan, that came from the USAPL as super dominant 105 lifters. Bob's obviously now 120. Anatoly, number 4, 940.5, former world record holder, 2-time world champion in the 105s as well as in the 93s once as well. And absolute legend of the sport, the best international non-American 105, Emil Norling. So the next couple are like the European contingent. You have Emil Norling, Regan Stagakis, junior world champ, Kogo Clement, European champion, Emil Norling, also obviously former world champion. Michael Davis, another American lifter. However, his best total came in 2021 now, so quite a few years ago. Jalen Falk is another young former USAPL lifter who's crossed over now to Powerlifting America, which is cool, and he's in the low 900s, so that's another American added to the 105s. And Walter Carriazo, the Canadian champion, also in the 900s. So here, Anthony McNaughton has quite the spread, and I made the controversial statement in one of my previous videos when I was talking about the world records that are likely to last the longest in powerlifting, where I said I think Anthony McNaughton's record is probably going to last longer than Perk's record is. Now, Perk since went and totaled 858 easily at Evancus Houston, so I don't know if that still stands, but Anthony McNaughton, if you saw his 979 and 975.5 performances, he absolutely annihilated it with ease, and it looks like he's good for 1,000, right? And as crazy as Ashton and Keenan's performances were, because we've been used to seeing Anatoly as the best on the world stage in the 940s, and here are these Americans doing more, well, Anthony McNaughton is just another step above that. And I mean, the battles in the 105s are cool amongst sort of the European contingent that we're used to seeing at Euros and Worlds consistently, right? And it's super exciting, but Anthony McNaughton is quite a ways ahead. And even on the American level, I think the only person that could really challenge him is if Ashton Ruska gets back to full health. I think he's good for high nines, and that is what would be required to challenge Anthony McNaughton. The question is, can he get back to full health to do that? And PB's total, which he hasn't done in a couple of years. I'm not sure. Okay, number 5 is the 59s. Now, the 59s, if I had made this list pretty much any other year in the history of raw tested powerlifting, modern since 2012, 59s would be rock bottom every single year, right? This is the first time the 59s are as exciting as they are. This is the most exciting the 59 kilo class has ever been, and it's not even close. It's always been Fedosienko way above everyone else, nowhere near him, right? We're finally starting to see some other international talent in the 59s who are starting to push up to Fedosienko levels. Also, if you're wondering why Fedosienko is on this list, he is still an active lifter. He's competing at the Asian Championships in December this year. So it'll be interesting to see what he puts up there. He's obviously a world record holder, like 8-time world champion. Hasn't been a world since 2021. And is he still around that range? 670.5 is his best total. A kilo below that is his IPF world record. His last meet, which was the Asian Championships last year, he totaled, I think, 620s, or so, yeah, somewhere around there. So is he even the strongest 59 anymore? We don't know, but regardless, it would be cool to see him in an actual battle where he might not even be the favorite after years of no one coming close to ever beating him. Wahyu Surya has the second highest 59 total ever that he did earlier this year, 641.5. He's done training totals in the high 600s as well. Waska Carpio, 638, 2-time world champion, obviously. Now, 638 is his best 59 kilo total, which he's done a few times. However, he competed at Evancus Houston and he totaled 667.5, although he wasn't just a light 66 who didn't cut, he was a full-on 66. He weighed in at 65.9. So, yeah, obviously his total is going to come back down, but you would still think he's good for more than his 638. And he's still going to retain at least some of that strength, moving back down to the 59s, which he said he will. Ivan Campana-Diaz is the current world champion with 637.5. Also at World Games, he totaled 5 kilos more than that at 642.5. He weighed in heavy, but unlike Waska, his heavy was only 59.8. So he literally just only didn't cut the last 800 grams of water to, I guess, preserve any Sheffield advantage. Like he didn't want to officially break the deadlift world record, I guess, right? Antoine Garcia, former world champion, is now at 625, which is pretty crazy. Also, they did World Games. Bodie Lacoste, the junior world champion, absolute deadlift demon, pulled 290 something, absolutely ridiculous. Valentin Dupoinol was his rival at Junior Worlds, who he beat. So 2 very promising juniors there. Then Kasim Sand, who I mentioned, dropped down from the 66s. 617.5 is in italics because technically he weighed in at 59.9 because that was done at World Games again. However, I'm counting him as a 59 because he said that for now he's staying as a 59. And in the future, he might move back up to 66s, who knows? And I'm not counting his 400 something kilo total from Worlds as his 59 total because it was heavily injured there. 617.5 is, I think, a much better reflection of what he can do as a 59 lifter. Might be slightly unfair because I'm ignoring Waska and Ivan's higher totals as a 66. Kasim Sand technically wasn't a 59, but whatever. I'm giving it to him. Pradeep Samuda also in the 600s, and Kwaku Nyarko, another junior, coming into the Opens in the 600s too. So not only are the top 10 active 59s in the 600s, which we've never had that many guys in the 600s before, but there's competition now. You have Waska, who even the 2 years where he won Worlds was relatively unopposed, because that was when Ivan was in himself only barely in the 600s. Now you have Ivan and Waska and Wahyu Surya, who are around that high 630, 640 mark. Antoine Garcia's leveled up in the 620s. You have the 2 juniors in the 620s. Kasim Sand, if he puts it all together, I think he could be pushing mid, maybe even world record numbers based on what he could do as a light 66 back when he was totaling 700 plus, right? And then there's also the question mark of, will Fedosienko come back and compete internationally against this new crop of 59s? That would be amazing to see him come back. And if he somehow manages to win, that would just solidify his GOAT status as he's come back years after his prime, after not being able to compete internationally, and still, as a Masters lifter now, well and truly a Masters lifter, beat these young guns and fresh generation of 59s. But yeah, 59s is the most exciting it's ever been by far, and is definitely become one of the most exciting weight classes in my opinion. Number 4 though is the 120s. Now the 120s has a good mixture, I think now, of the 2 criteria I looked at, which is they have tight battles, and they also have the wow factor of Rondell Hunt, who is still quite a ways out in front here. He's finally coming back to the international scene from next year. We're going to see him at Worlds. About damn time that happened. But he's far ahead of everyone, 10:45, although he's not as far ahead as he would have been last year or the year before, because there are quite a few lifters chasing and close to being in the thousands. So you have Nonso Chinye, 988 at Advancus, is the second biggest 120 total ever. Obviously, Dennis Cornelius' 978.5 is still the IPF world record officially, until Rondell takes his opening deadlift at his first international event and breaks it by however much he wants. So that's why there's no globe symbol here. There's no actual world record holder actively lifting. Bob Matthews, 978.5, although we know he's way above that. He's in the thousands now, in training anyway, and I anticipate that when he competes at SBD Austin against Rondell, he will be in the thousands. Joseph McDonald, junior world champion, also from Trinidad and Tobago, 965. Etienne Elcher was the world champion this year, pulled off the upset against Nonso, Big Dev, Joseph McDonald, Abdul Mo Suleiman, which was predicted by pretty much no one except for Presser Powerlifting. Shout out to my accurate prediction that I'm still riding the coattails off. But yeah, Etienne, obviously you can't, I mean, all the hype now is around Nonso, Josh Ngoka, but Etienne, still the world champ, right? Devin Williams, podium as well at Worlds this year. Josh Ngoka, 957.5 at Junior Worlds, coming second behind Joseph McDonald. But in the gym, he's famously totaled 1,000 kilos. So he's could potentially be there. Plus, he's super young, just like Nonso. I think they're both like 20 years old, which is crazy. Tony Cliff, who is multiple-time world champion, 955.5 was his best total from a couple years ago. He's a masters lifter now. I don't know if he's still planning on actively competing internationally at the open level. It'll be hard getting the Team GB spot over Josh Ngoka and Nonso, I would imagine, moving forward, but can't write him off. Brandon Todd also does strongman stuff, I think, totaled over 2,100 pounds. And Konstantin Musayev, another Russian lifter, world champion from 2021, and another lifter who is competing at the Asian Championships in December. So we'll see what he can do, but he's someone that a lot of people probably forgot about because he hasn't been able to compete internationally, but he was a former world champion. And if he can get back into the mid 900s, then he's up there in contention too. So yeah, Rondell is coming back next year, and he's not going to be unopposed. Obviously, we're going to see how close Bob is in a few months at SPD Austin, but then Nonso's already in the 980s. That's already a 20 kilo jump from what we saw at Worlds and Euros this year, where it was 960s. I don't think anyone's doubting that his total is going to start with a 1 next year. He's going to be in the thousands. Probably you could say the same thing for Josh Ngoka, given he's only 20 and making rapid improvements as well. And he's already hit it in the gym. Same with Joseph McDonald, another young lifter who's not only young in age, but very young in the sport, has been powerlifting for very long, and he's already 965. You would think by the time Worlds next year rolls around, he's probably in the thousands. Etienne is also only out of the juniors like a year or so ago, and he's making rapid improvements, right? Dev as well, I know he's taken a bit of time off to get healthy again, especially with his knee, but if he comes back healthy, it wouldn't surprise me at all if by the time Worlds rolls around next year, we see at least another 4 or 5 lifters in the 1,000 kilo club here, which means Rondell, he was, I think, 10.5 at PNATs this year as a guest lifter when he was not quite at his best. If he's low thousands, not quite at his best, he's potentially vulnerable against all these guys who are in the thousands. So it's close, and the head-to-heads are there, but also you just have Rondell, who's one of the biggest outliers ever, and you could argue relative strength-wise, one of the strongest powerlifters to ever live, and has that unique blend of relative and absolute strength. So yeah, the fact that Rondell's coming back just makes his weight class all the much more exciting heading into 2026. Number 3 is the 74 kilo weight class. Again, this is shaken up quite a bit because if I had made this list early on this year, the 74s would be way further down. But since we've had a few lifters come back to the 74s, Elliot Sykes and Ilya Marichev have somewhat closed the gap over Perk. It's become a lot more exciting in my opinion. So obviously number 1 you have Perk, who is the world champion world record holder, but you also have Shell, who is the world champion world record holder from the 66s, as I mentioned earlier, coming back up to the 74s. And people forget, but Shell, 815 was his best total, which was the world record before Perk came back to the IPF last year, and obviously destroyed it since. 815 is what Shell totaled, but even when he was cutting down to make 66 towards Sheffield, he was totaling 820s in the gym, weighing 70 point something. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for him to keep getting stronger now that he's moving back up to the 74s and he's done with a 66 kilo cut. I think if he gets back to his peak form, we could see him 820s, 830s, hell even pushing 840, which I know he said was his goal leading into Worlds that year where he came second to Perk. It was 2024. Elliot Sykes, I don't know how, but I skipped talking about Perk for a second there. Austin Perkins obviously is the pound-for-pound king, solidified at Evancus Houston without even having to go all out. But 858 is ridiculous, and it's not even his top end. 843 is his official world record that he's going to destroy at Sheffield, I'm sure. I've heard some crazy things from him and his coach about what they're planning to do, so I can't wait to see it. But yeah, the fact that this weight class has the pound-for-pound king automatically gives it the wow factor and puts it pretty high up in this list. But now that he has contention, like I said, he's still far ahead. 858 is still 40 kilos above what everyone else has done, more than 40 kilos, and he's got more in the tank. But like I said, Shell coming back is cool, plus you have the whole champ v champ aspect to it. Elliot Sykes, though, this is what makes it exciting. Elliot Sykes, super young, 815, barely out of the sub-juniors, this guy, and he's already joined with the second biggest 74 total. 815, if you look just last year, where was his total? Mid-ish 700s. Now he's up at 815. With the rate that he's progressing, I think it's definitely possible he's going to close the gap on Perk in the next year or so, or at least get closer to Perk, close enough to where he'll keep him honest. If Perk shows up or has to show up at PA Nats again, it'll be close between the two of them. Or Perk will actually somewhat have to push himself and not just sandbag and beat everyone with ease. Similar thing with Ilya Marchev, another young Russian lifter who's getting a lot stronger, and 798 is his best total officially. I know he's totaled, I think, 820 or so at a Russian meet that for some reason never made its way onto open powerlifting. But if you look at his best lifts combined, I think he's at like 830, and that's best like competition lifts. He's also competing at the Asian Championships in December this year, so we'll see what he puts up there. But he, well, very well, I think it will be 800 plus for sure. But he could also be pushing that 820s, 830s, pushing into the 840s range. Then you got Cameron Harmon, who is a USAPL lifter. Chunchia Fan finished in second place behind Perk at Worlds this year, bench specialist. Peter Huang, another USAPL lifter. Balthazar Bertrand is another junior, a French junior, who's super promising, 765. Zach DiConstanzo, another American lifter, and Clinton Lee from Singapore, been a mainstay on the international scene for a few years now, well and truly into the mid 700s as well. So pretty steep drop off when you go from the top couple guys down, but yeah, Perk has the spread, but I mean, he's a pound for pound king, so regardless of the spread or not, it's cool to see him compete every time he does so. But Elliot Sykes, Ilya Marchev, they're coming up, plus Shell coming back up to the 74s. If he can get back to his peak strength that he was on his initial way down to the 66s and beyond, he could push Perk. And if we do see Perk absolutely destroy everyone at Sheffield and put the numbers up that he's been talking about or hinting towards, then that would just add a whole nother level of insanity. Even though it would make it less close and less tight, it would just be crazy to see a 74 totaling in the high 8s, potentially even 900. But yeah, this is more of like a future potential thing as far as Elliot Sykes and Ilya Marchev and potentially Shell go moving forward. The other thing to mention is the 266ers who I talked about earlier, Panna and Kyoto, are moving up to the 74s. Now, Panna is someone who totaled 730s as just a 66 minus the water cut, right? You would think he's going to be well and truly into the mid 7s and cracking this top 10 the first time he probably competes as a 74. I think he's already put up gym totals of around 760 that I've seen from him recently in training. Now, we know he's always put up big gym totals, but this time his cut's not going to have to be insane, or he might not even have to cut at all for his first few 74 meets. Kyoto Ishiyama, similar thing. Big gym lifts. Total usually comes down on the platform, relatively inconsistent due to the weight cut, among other things, I'm sure. But he's now a 74, and what can he do? I mean, 725 is his best total on the platform as a 66. Again, I would imagine he's going to be well into the mid 700s when he fully competes as a 74. So that's just another aspect as to why the 74 is ranked this high, is because of those two superstars from the 66s moving up and joining the 74s. Number 2, we have the 83 kilo class, and this is probably the most improved, no, it is definitely the most improved class over the last year, because the jump in numbers we've seen has been ridiculous. Since Russ was in the 840s for ages, and that was the biggest total ever. Now, the 9th best active lifter in the 83s is at 840. How crazy is that? But you have Joey B, who, if it weren't for Perk, would be the pound for pound king. 904, he totaled Vankus Houston. He's the world champion. He's the current world record holder with 890.5 that he did at Worlds this year. Taylor Atwood, who is the GOAT of the sport, in my opinion. When I did my GOAT rankings, he was number 1. 876, which is crazy as well. He's the 74 kilo king who's moved up to the 83s and is now right there. If it weren't for Joey B, he would be the strongest 83. So it's just cool to see him compete there. And he did push Joey B. I know that looks like quite a big gap, but he made Joey B panic backstage when he came out for his final pull and was pulling to beat him. Durance Kingamu is now in the 870s, of course. Pulled off the huge upset against Russ last year at Worlds when he went from the 820s into the 840s. Now he's added another like 30 kilos to that, which is wild. He's in the 870s now at World Games, which is crazy. So he's getting up there. Ade's at 861, although everyone knows Ade's good for way more than that. He actually did total 865 at Ivanka's Houston, but he weighed in at 84 point something. So his best 83 total is still 861. But yeah, he came within inches of totaling 890.5 or 891 to beat Joy B at Worlds this year. Just couldn't quite clinch and lock out that final deadlift, even though he lifted it almost all the way up. So he's right up there. Angelo Fortino, 860 at Ivanka's Houston, another American lifter who's up there now in the 860s. Sean Noriega, just 2.5 kilos behind. Again, someone who's been around for ages and has finally come back and started PBing his total again after sort of stagnating for a couple of years there. Tim Monagatti from New Zealand, former 74, has moved up. He's been injured since he put up that 845.5 at New Zealand meet last year, so hopefully he gets back to full strength soon. And then Chris Prez and Sean Gian, some more American 83s. American 83s are crazy stacked, but they're also in that 848.30. Oh, and Jaden Lowe, by the way, I don't know why I skipped him there, but he's another USAPL lifter who's only 20 years old, 845.5. Hopefully he also comes across to Powerlifting America and makes it even more stacked. Delaney Wallace is now moving up to the 93s, which is why he's not on here. I'll talk about him in a second. When I look at my number one, which is obviously the 93s now, which you probably expected coming into this. But yeah, 83s have just an absolute crazy roster of Americans at PNATs that you have to get through. And then on the world level, you also have the two Brits, Durans and Ade, who are far and away sort of the best in the world. But you have Tim Monagatti, which if he's healthy, he's good for mid-800s. Hopefully he gets healthy again. You also have some other international lifters like Callie Johansson, former world champion in 74s, who's in the 800s as an 83. If he can continue to improve and sort of get up there in the mid-8s, he's in contention. You have Kafui Hotsanyame from Canada in the, I think he's 810. Manson Adegu, two-time junior world champion in the 800s. Gabriel Belomo, another Italian junior. So you have some other international lifters who are getting into the 800s and relatively young and getting better. Obviously, this is dominated by the Americans, and it's sort of a shame that only one can take the world spot, which is even more of an issue with the 93s I'll talk about soon. But yeah, just crazy stacked all around internationally. And just the leveling up we've seen of the 83s is crazy. I know Joe B has somewhat of a spread now. That wasn't the case. He was a lot more contested before he hit his 900 at PNF that blew everyone's minds. But now he has a bit of the spread. But man, Taylor is Taylor Atwood. Like, you can't doubt the GOAT, right? I'm sure he's going to continue to get stronger, and I don't doubt that he's going to be able to crack the 900s. And the Brits, Durans and Ade, Durans is still improving. If Ade can put it together, he's already in the high 800s, so he could potentially crack 9. And all the other American lifters who continue to level up now that Joey B has showed them what is possible, sort of like the 4-minute mile effect, right? Like one person beats Russ, now everyone's beating Russ. So yeah, 83s are definitely up there. However, they are not the most exciting weight class because that belongs to the 93s. It is not even close. This is far and away number one. You knew it was going to be number one coming into this. I'm sure you did. I would go so far as to say that this version of the 93 kilo class, not only is it the most exciting the 93s have ever been, but it is the most exciting weight class we've ever seen in the history of modern raw tested powerlifting on the men's side. You take any weight class at any point in time from now back to 2012, this version of the 93s, in my opinion, is the best of the lot. And that's saying something because the 93s have always been historically a very exciting weight class, but now they're just on a completely another level. Similar to the 83s, they're leveling up like crazy. The fact that 9 out of these 10 lifters start with the 900 in the 900 kilo totals is wild, given that Gavin Aiden just over a year ago became the first guy to do it in the IPF, and now there's nine of them, right? But you have Will Ball, the 19-year-old who became the strongest 93 ever recently with 920. Jonathan Kaiko, who's the greatest 93 of all time, or most accomplished, two-time world champion, former world record holder, two-time Sheffield silver medalist, a bunch of crazy battles that he's won throughout his career and showdowns he's come out on top with. Russell Orhe, who's the 83 kilo GOAT and also one of the greatest powerlifters of all time, who is the official world record holder with his 918 that he did at an APFs. Then Emil Krastev, who's the world champion and former world record holder, 917.5. Gustav Hedlund is another former world champion and former Sheffield champion. Brandon Petrie in the 900s, world's medalist. Very close to winning nationals this year, making it to worlds again. Gavin Aiden, 901, who became the first guy to cross into the 900s. Dominic Fuqua, who everyone forgets about, total 900 to podium at PNATs this year. The most underrated performance in powerlifting this year by far. People need to put more respect on what Dominic Fuqua did, because that was wild. No one ever talks about it. Demetrius Smith also entered into the 900s out of Anchors, Houston. And Jamar Royster squatted 800 pounds on his way to totaling 890.5. Alongside this, you also have, like I mentioned, Delaney Wallace, who was 867.5 as an 83 at PNAS this year. And not only that, but in the gym, we've seen him total damn near 900. Or I'm pretty sure he's done a 900 kilo total consisting of gym lifts. He's moving up to the 93s for SBD Austin. I don't know if that's permanent or not. For now, I'm putting him as a 93. But the fact that he was 867.5 as an 83, I think he's going to be in the high 8s, if not 900s, straight away as a 93, which is just another American 93 to add to the mix, as if there wasn't enough already. Then you also have Enohoro, the Hungarian lifter, multiple-time world's medalist and one of the greatest deadlifters ever, who is moving up from the 83s to the 93s as well. So what can that extra bodyweight do to his subtotal? And if he can keep his deadlift where it is or improve upon it, then he's immediately going to be a threat as well with his crazy Hail Mary deadlifts. I can't wait to see what he loads as a 93 after he's already been loading 900 pounds as an 83. But I could talk about the 93s all day long. It's the fact that you have, who is the best 93 at the moment? You can't even answer the question. That's how close together they are, because you have Will Ball, who by the numbers is the strongest, Jonathan Kaiko, who's the most accomplished resume-wise, Russell Orhe, who's the official world record holder, Emil Krastev, who's the current world champion, Gustav Hedlund, also former world champ, world record holder, Sheffield winner, and multiple-time medalist. You could argue he's the greatest 93 of all time as well, alongside Kaiko. So who's the best? We don't know. And then you also have all the other Americans alongside those top 5. You have Petrie, Gavin Aiden, Fuqua, Demetrius Smith, Jamar Royster, Delaney Wallace, we'll see what he can do. Enna, we'll see what they can do. Christian Eindhoven is another international British lifter who's in the high 870s officially, but he came very close to actually beating Kaiko for podium this year and totaling 890s. So he's up there too. But yeah, absolutely crazy scenes in the 93s. We don't know who the best is, and PNATs is going to be an absolute... We thought it was stacked this year. Next year is going to be something else, because Will Ball wasn't even on anyone's radar at PNATs this year. Next year, he's coming in as almost the favorite. Probably will be the favorite because he's the youngest, still improving the most rapidly, and has the biggest total on paper. But yeah, it's going to be an absolute murderer's row at PNATs next year. And whichever American gets through is going to have to face Emil Krastev and Gustav Hedlund, who are up there with the best 93s in the world, as well as Christian Eindhoven and some other ones I'm sure as well will emerge in that time. But yeah, it's just a shame that only one American gets to go to PNATs, because the 93s right now are crazy, and every time the 93s compete, you have to be tuning in. You have to be watching, you have to be on the live stream, because you cannot miss what goes on in the 93s, be that on the American national level or internationally in the IPF. It is the most can't miss division in men's powerlifting right now, and it is not even close. So there you have it. There's my top 10. I'm going to be following this up with a video next, looking at the women's side and the top 10 divisions there. So let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree with my picks.